I'm just really, 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 really into pulp books. I'm so into pulp. Not like orange juice pulp, not like Pulp Fiction the movie. I am into pulp literature, which is this really specific subgenre. I'm gonna do a video or multiple videos on it at some point, more than this one is about it, because I'm really crazy about Pulp Fiction. And Pulp Fiction is a very specific, like, subgenre of fiction, strictly speaking, but in more modern times it's opened up to generally refer to mass market genre fiction paperback. So it's usually sci-fi, horror, and fantasy, but it also can apply to just like crime. It can even be romance. It's just these kind of cheap-looking books that you'll sometimes see in secondhand shops. A lot of the time they are ones that aren't being printed at all at this point, or if they are being printed, that's pretty rare, and they'll be in quite a different format, because these are usually quite cheaply made, kind of yellowing papers, small text sort of books. They also typically will have illustrations on the cover, because these are usually from the, I would say, like the 60s to the 90s is a bit much, but you know, that sort of era, and just publishing was different, books were made differently. You don't really see books like this anymore. And I'm really crazy about them because, in truth, a lot of them can be hidden treasures. So you pick one up and it looks ridiculous. The back cover text, they just didn't know how to write blurbs back then. And then you actually read it and it's incredible. And I have a couple books like that I would recommend. That's not what this one is about, though. This one is really specifically about one guy named Guy N. Smith. Guy N. Smith is a extremely prolific author. Well, he quite recently passed away at the age of 80, and he wrote hundreds of like short stories and a huge amount of books, and in particular he wrote the Crab series. And the Crab series is a incredible series of, there's like 8 main books to the series, but there's a huge amount of short stories and other things in collections, because this guy just wrote all the time, all about killer crabs. And I should say that this wasn't that unique, this crab obsession, where all of the books, I will say right now, are just about a bunch of crabs showing up and killing a bunch of people. That's what every plot of this Crab series is. I'm holding here The Origin of the Crabs, which is the one that first kind of caught me on to this guy, because I saw the title The Origin of the Crabs, and I was just really excited, because I was just like, gosh, I wonder where crabs come from. I hope I learn, and I hope that this crab covered in blood has something to teach me about the origin of crabs. And that is how I learned way more about Guy N. Smith. And I'm not going to give a full thing on it. I'm mostly going to talk about the Crab series as a whole and this book. But his work is kind of incredible. I'd suggest pulling up his Wikipedia page, and you can just sort of see the list of all of the books he wrote. But even better than that, it's worth like going and looking at a site like Goodreads or other places where you can see the book covers, because this is one of the things about pulp novels, is they often have incredible book covers. I have so many. The top shelf here of my bookcase is mostly kind of weird pulp I've grabbed. At some point I'm gonna do a bookshelf video, and I will be showing you guys this, just because I have some incredible covers. I haven't even read all the pulp books I have. I just pick up the ones with these amazing, weird, painted covers that you just don't get anymore. So the Crab series is Night of the Crabs, which is 1976, and it stretches all the way until 2019 with The Charnel Caves, a crabs novel. So these crabs really just keep attacking England, is the whole plot summary. It goes Night of the Crabs, Killer Crabs, The Origin of the Crabs, Crabs on the Rampage, Crabs' Moon, Crabs, The Human Sacrifice, which has the best cover of all time, by the way. I need to know who painted it, I need to find that out, and I need to get like a full print so I can hang it on the wall. I am really obsessed with Crabs, The Human Sacrifice. The art piece is incredible, and one of the things with these books here that are a lot more obscure, like Guy N. Smith isn't that obscure, but some of the ones I have are extremely obscure pulp. You cannot really find high-quality renders or scans of a lot of the covers, and tracking down the books can sometimes be hard or expensive. Most of them, again, I pick up my pulp at secondhand shops, because I love going to secondhand stores. I do it all the time. I browse around my city. There's like 10 of them in a circle, and I just check in there like every week. That's how I find all my books. And, so I pick up The Origin of the Crabs. This thing cost me like £1 max. 1.30 in fact. But then this is a different book, which I've been sort of flaunting around, which is called, it's called The Sucking Pit. And, it's called The Sucking Pit. So it's called The Sucking Pit. And I did, in fact, buy The Sucking Pit, specifically at a secondhand bookstore online. And that cost me, I believe, like 13 quid, which is way more than I pay for, like, any book ever. I very rarely buy new books. But it was worth it, because it's called The Sucking Pit. It's called The Sucking Pit. I probably won't read it, because it's, I think it's pretty racist, it turns out. I'm not going to read you the back cover text on this one, but that is the problem with a lot of these older books, and that is one of the pitfalls of it. But I'm not here to talk about, like, the full thing of Pulp Fiction and, like, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the entrenched ideas of racism and sexism that often come hand in hand. I'm just here to talk about some crabs, okay? The Origin of the Crabs, which is book 3, which I didn't know when I picked it up, and it doesn't matter. So, yeah, monster books like this, like, I would describe it as a B movie, like a monster attack B movie in book form. And they're actually, like, pretty common from around this time period. Origin of the Crabs is 1979, and just with the onslaught of horror movies about, you know, a bunch of animals that go crazy and kill things, there were books about that too. There's a bunch of them. Just immediately that comes to mind, a much more well-known one is The Rats, who I don't know the author of, but there's one called The Rats, and you'll never guess what happens in The Rats. There's rats, and then they kill a bunch of people. So Guy N. Smith did a bunch of ones that are exactly that. He did Locusts, just Locust, 1979, Bats Out of Hell, 1978. He did a book called Snakes, Alligators. He really did cover all of them. I'm just scrolling a list right now because I know for a fact he did a huge amount. I feel like he did multiple bat ones. The Slime Beast series. I'm just gonna count that as an animal. So, this is a common enough subgenre. It's just actually kind of normal, but I had to pick it up. I had to read it. I read most of it in a dentist's office, which I don't know if that's going to inform my views on the book. Let's just actually talk about some crabs and discuss the world of horrible little crab guys. And this is kind of a looser video because honestly, it's a very small book. I don't have a huge lengthy review that's going to cover all of the hot details. And if you haven't noticed, I don't own the rest of the series, and I'm actually not interested in owning and reading the rest of the series because, I mean, it's mostly just about some crabs that attack people. Like, the Crabs the Human Sacrifice, I might pick that up. I want the cover. Maybe I'll read it even, because I'd love to see some crabs do human sacrifices. I'm not actually that interested in, say, Crab's Moon. I assume that I know how the plot's gonna go. So, Origin of the Crabs. I walk in here, and as I've told you, The Origin of the Crabs by Guy N. Smith, my book report. If you imagine that it's a book about giant crabs that eat people, yeah, obviously, and I don't really need to say anything else. Like, that sums up the whole book very well. There's big crabs that live in a lake, and they kill everyone, and that's it. That's it. I'm gonna be waving around this book the whole time. Let me read you a quote, which is probably one of my favorite, like, literature quotes of all time, and I will call it literature, because it is what it is. It's literature. I'm gonna even move this to my hand, so I'll gesture, and you can really see the crab book. John pulled Christine to him, an embrace that said all, shut down everything. Two people in love in a world of their own, a higher plane where huge crabs did not exist, oblivious to everything else. Euphoria. 149. I have page numbers on this one. Deal with it. Can you imagine two people in love in a world of their own, on a higher plane where huge crabs did not exist? Euphoria. Yeah, it reads basically as a very cheap pulp novel B-movie monster fest. Like, you can pretty much hear MST3K commentary as you're kind of going through it. It is the exact sort of thing. Like, the thing is, though, is that I can't really fault Origin of the Crabs, or the crabs as a whole, for not being a highly intellectual tone. Like, it's about man-eating crabs, and he wrote a ton of other stories about man-eating crabs, and it's crabs. That's it. You don't even learn their origin, by the way. Like, this is a lie. There's no origin of the crabs here. I don't know where these crabs came from. I mean, they came from the water. They were mutated, maybe. I don't know. They're crabs. Like, is that important? Do I need to cover more than that? So, in a remote Scottish village, crabs attack. The end. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the book is light on plot, and it kind of actually lacks a main character. Every single person with a viewpoint in Origin of the Crabs dies by the end. 2 crabs. And the most consistent viewpoint is actually, like, the villain, who is just a guy, not the crabs. We don't really get a lot of crab POV in this. So, plot-wise, it's when a poacher, like, recounts being attacked by a big crab, the lord of the area just dismisses it as silly. Then his gamekeeper is killed, and then his guests are killed. The brother of a guest comes to investigate, and that's roughly our hero. And he starts a relationship, that's the romance in there. It's very small and nothing. The lord who owns this area that he's realizing is infested with giant crabs, he tries dynamite, but it only makes the crabs even angrier, so they murder all of his staff. He burns down his house, but the crabs are fine, so they go out and they kill more people. The brother of one of the murdered guests, he tries to tell the police and the media, but it just brings more people to the area to look for what they assume is Nessie. But it's crabs, it's not Nessie, and so many people die. The crabs hide when publicity really starts to go on. The crabs are smart enough, they don't want to be caught on camera. And then they go and they murder the hero-ish guy, that brother, and his love and trust, and they die. Great. The Lord then tries to use cyanide, but he's killed by crabs. And the book just ends after that. Like, that sounds like a pretty weird plot summary. That is my plot summary. That is the full plot. It's a series of people being killed by crabs. The book just ends with everyone dead, and an epilogue that tells us via asterisks, like, this is a prequel to Night of the Crabs, the first book in the series, which, again, I just had no idea going in what it was. And for a prequel, there's not actually, like, that much setup. Like, it's briefly said that maybe the crabs are due to some alleged offshore nuclear test by the Russians, and maybe they got to this Scottish lake via maybe an underwater tunnel. But, like, who cares, you know? The book's just sincere about crab murder and gore, and lots of big descriptions of, like, lakes and water, because the author also wrote for hunting magazines, and you can really tell because he really goes in about just describing the wilderness and this kind of the lake area which is used for hunting. That is sort of it. And crabs as a villain are very silly to me. That's sort of where I'm going with my whole thesis here, is that it's kind of fun to read about all of these crabs murdering lots of people, even though it is a little bit boring because it's the same thing over and over again, because they're crabs. And, like, the title is funny, Origin of the Crabs, but I also just picked it up and chose to read it because it was crabs. I probably wouldn't read alligators, I wouldn't read wolves, but I'll read about crabs, because crabs are they're just little guys. Like, I mean, any creature can be scary if it's huge and it loves human flesh. Like, just about anything of any sort of the cutest animal out there, the most docile animal out there, if it was big and it liked human flesh, we'd probably be scared of it. That's just sort of how it works. But, like, a crab, you know, through every attack in this book, somebody hears this click-clacking of these thunderous claws, and they see these hatred-filled eyes, and all I can imagine is just, like, he's just a little dude. He's just a little crab. I think crabs are kind of funny-looking. I understand why people might not be appealing to them, because they are sort of, they have that insectoid kind of look to them. But they're cute. They're cute. I mean, I might be biased. I had hermit crabs as a child, but they're just little guys. They don't mean anything about it. And hermit crabs especially, not the crabs in the book, but hermit crabs are so cute. They have a little house, and they have a beautiful homing market. They all line up to exchange shells whenever they, like, get big enough, and they're just cute little guys. So just thinking about crabs and the wonderful world of crabs that we all care about, let me just read some quotes as we contemplate crabs from this book. It reared up, a crab the size of a fully grown hare, its tiny face a mask of evil, showing the hatred it felt for the man who had struck it. Page 11. He shivered, but he had to admire the crustaceans. The perfect murderers. They knew how to cover their tracks. 57. The reed bed was moving, a shape, unrecognizable. 2 eyes, red ones, tiny eyes that glowed and shined like uncut diamonds. Coming closer. Click, click, clickety-click. 46. You gotta admire the dedication. Nothing in this book, nothing in Origin of the Crabs is tongue-in-cheek, really. The kills are honestly very gruesome, they're very bloody. These are crabs that crave human flesh, feel intense hatred, understand military tactics, and enjoy methodical torture. Who knows how or why, and does it even matter? There's a lot of just like, I could kind of wrap it up right there, honestly. This is sort of a small video because I am currently really, really busy. I am somebody who also has famously quite bad medical problems. I also have other problems, such as like mental illness-y things like that. So getting work done is hard, and it's really weird to realize that YouTube sort of has become my job because I am disabled, I'm unfit to work. So I didn't have a job before YouTube accidentally happened, and now YouTube is my job because the government removes a lot of your benefits monies if you start earning money on the side, which makes sense. Anyways, it's weird having a job. I'm not used to it. I'm working to get stuff. I'm working on reading a new series. At the moment, I have a guest over from abroad, so I'm just so busy that I can't really be doing any new work. But I appreciate everybody. We're almost to 20,000 subscribers, which is super crazy. Just so crazy. And I don't have much more to say about that. But no, I hope that you guys enjoyed just learning a little bit about this slice of Crab Carnage book. It's just one of my favorite little things. I love keeping the book on hand. It's not incredible in any way. I wouldn't recommend it to people. But also, like, if you want a pulp novel about giant crabs, like, I can't stop you from reading it. It's not great. It's not bad. It's crabs.